Hello, everyone. Have you ever stayed in a hotel or inn that just didn't feel right? Imagine a strange man following you from the lobby to the pool, then knocking on your door in the dead of night. Or hearing mysterious noises in your room that lead you to something or someone you never expected. In today's stories, we'll dive into two terrifying experiences where people unknowingly checked into places filled with more than just unsettling sounds. Have you ever had a similar experience? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more spine-chilling tales. It was a Monday evening in early February, cold, quiet, and unnaturally still. Ethan Myers, a long-haul trucker with 10 years of road under his belt, was driving his 18-wheeler westbound through the flatlands of Nebraska. The sun had dipped behind the horizon hours ago, leaving nothing but the black emptiness of Highway 34 stretching for miles. Ethan had picked up a load of medical supplies in Omaha, bound for a distribution center in North Platte. He wasn't planning to stop, not that night. He wanted to beat the clock, get the job done, and maybe catch a few hours of sleep in a real bed instead of his cab. By 11:45 p.m., he'd been driving for nearly 9 hours. His eyes burned. The dull ache in his shoulders had turned into a throb. He rubbed his face with cold water and cracked the window to let the icy air slap his senses awake. But the fatigue clung to him like a weight, dragging at his focus. The highway was dead empty, no headlights, no taillights, no signs of life, just the hum of the engine and the rhythmic bump of tires on asphalt. And then, something. Up ahead, maybe 200 feet, a figure appeared in the road. Ethan jolted. His heart skipped. He slammed the brakes. The tires howled as the semi slowed with a groan, headlights casting a long cone of light down the center of the blacktop. A man was standing there. No, not standing frozen. He was wearing all black, including a thick scarf wrapped unnaturally tight around a long stretched neck. The weirdest part? Ethan couldn't make out the man's face. It was there, but not. A blur, like a smudge on a lens. No eyes, no mouth, just nothing. Ethan leaned forward, reaching for the window switch. Before he could speak, the man snapped his head to the left and sprinted into the woods. Gone. No sound, no trace. Just Ethan, alone in the cab, trying to convince himself he hadn't just seen something impossible. But his gut said otherwise. And the night had just begun. Ethan's hands were trembling as he gripped the steering wheel. He didn't speak, didn't breathe, just stared into the stretch of woods where that thing had vanished. He muttered, "What the hell was that?" But the silence that followed felt heavier than any answer. Trying to shake it off, Ethan eased the truck back onto the road. The hum of the engine returned, but his heartbeat hadn't slowed. He checked his mirrors. Nothing. Still no cars. Still no life. Then, it happened again. Something darted across the road, maybe 100 feet ahead. It was fast. Too fast. At first he thought it was an animal, maybe a deer or coyote. But no. The closer he got, the more he realized it had 2 legs. Human legs. Ethan didn't even hit the brakes this time. He just pressed the gas, eyes wide, pulse pounding in his ears. "Nope, not stopping again," he whispered. The highway stretched endlessly before him, cutting through dense patches of trees. The dark now felt alive, like something was watching, stalking, waiting. The wind outside whistled through the narrow cracks of his truck like voices whispering things he couldn't quite hear. He was running on fumes physically, mentally, and emotionally. His vision blurred with exhaustion, and twice he found himself veering into the opposite lane. That's when he knew he couldn't keep going like this. He scanned the side of the road desperately, until he spotted a gravel turnout just wide enough for a big rig. With a shaky breath, he pulled in, shifted into park, and leaned back. His eyes shut. But the terror wasn't over. It was only beginning. Ethan didn't remember falling asleep. It must have only been 40 minutes, maybe less. But when his eyes snapped open, it was pitch black. The kind of black where your own hand disappears inches from your face. There was no sound, no wind. No passing cars. Not even the ticking of his dashboard clock. Just silence. And something else, a feeling. His gut twisted. It wasn't hunger. It wasn't fatigue. It was the unmistakable sense of being watched. He sat up straight in the driver's seat, pulse quickening. Without really knowing why, his hand reached out and flipped on the headlights. What the lights revealed stole the breath from his lungs. There was someone standing directly in front of the truck, no more than 10 feet away. It was him, the man from the road. Same black scarf, same pitch-dark clothing. But now, Ethan could see his face, and it was worse than he imagined. The man's eyes were stretched wide open, almost bulging. His lips pulled back into a grin so wide it looked inhuman, unnatural, like his face had been forced to smile. He wasn't blinking, he wasn't moving, just staring straight into Ethan's soul. Ethan didn't think. He turned the ignition, slammed the gear into drive, and peeled out of that gravel lot with gravel spraying behind him. The truck groaned under the sudden movement, but it didn't matter. He didn't look back. He couldn't. That rest stop was over 10 miles from where he'd first seen the man. There was no way he could have gotten there on foot. Not in that time. Unless something else was going on. Something that wasn't human. Ethan drove through the night with white knuckles on the wheel, and adrenaline surging through his veins. Every shadow in the trees beside the road looked like it could move. Every bump made him flinch. His eyes darted from mirror to windshield, over and over, expecting to see that face again. Wide eyes, twisted smile, frozen in place. But it didn't show. Not again. When he finally reached the distribution center in North Platte, it was nearly 3 a.m. He pulled into the empty lot, put the truck in park, and just sat there, trying to process what had happened. Was he hallucinating? He hadn't slept much. He'd pushed himself. Maybe it was just exhaustion playing tricks on him. Maybe. But something didn't sit right. That face, he remembered it too clearly. That timing, there's no way someone could have gotten 10 miles ahead of him, on foot, in the dead of night, without a single vehicle passing by. It defied reason. And then there was that feeling. That gut-deep dread. That primal terror you only feel when something is truly wrong. Ethan had experienced weird things on the road before, but never like this. He didn't tell the crew at the warehouse. What could he say? That something followed him through the Nebraska dark, smiling like a puppet in the high beams. He didn't want to sound crazy, but that night never left him. Even now, years later, sometimes when he's driving alone in the dead of night, he'll feel it again, that cold ripple down his spine. And every now and then, he still checks his mirrors, just in case. Years passed, and Ethan settled into a quieter life, working a desk job in the city. The road was behind him, no more sleepless nights behind the wheel. He kept to a predictable routine, the comfort of normalcy slowly erasing the strange and terrifying events from his memory. But that night, it never truly left. It would creep back in when he least expected it. A dark highway at dusk, a flicker of movement in the corner of his eye, a strange figure standing too still in the shadows. The face would flash in his mind, that twisted grin, the wide eyes. And every time, his heart would race, his palms would sweat. He'd tell himself it was just a memory, a trick of his mind. Until the night it happened again. It was a cold evening in the middle of winter. Ethan was driving home after a long day at work. He took the same route he always did, an isolated stretch of road that cut through the outskirts of town. The sky was clear, the moon high above, casting pale light across the landscape. And then, just like before, it appeared. A figure in the road, standing still in the darkness. This time, Ethan didn't hesitate. He slammed the brakes, but his body was already shaking before the truck came to a stop. The figure turned. The same black scarf, the same eerie, invisible face. But this time, there was something different. It was closer. Too close. It grinned again. Ethan couldn't breathe. The road was silent, the air still. For the first time in his life, he didn't just feel fear. He felt hunted. And in that moment, he realized something. It wasn't just following him. It was waiting. The winter chill had already settled in, the sun dipping behind the hills as Jack Harper, a 27-year-old UPS driver, finished his long shift. It was already past 5 in the evening, and the streets of Knoxville, Tennessee, were almost deserted. The city was quiet, but Jack was far from the safety of the bustling downtown. His final stop tonight was deep in the countryside, a remote trailer tucked away from civilization. He pulled up to the house, the dim headlights of the truck cutting through the thickening dark. The trailer looked old, run down, and almost abandoned. No lights shining through the windows, no signs of life. The kind of place Jack always dreaded delivering to after dark. He felt the unsettling silence press in on him as he grabbed the package and made his way to the door. Knocking once, he waited. Nothing. He knocked again, louder this time. Still no answer. A slight unease began to grow in the pit of his stomach. The air around him was still, heavy with the scent of damp earth and rotting wood. He glanced around, half expecting something, anything, to stir in the stillness of the night. Finally, the door creaked open, revealing an elderly woman standing in the doorway. Her face was pale, her hair thin and unkempt. Her eyes, though, were sharp, calculating, and as soon as she looked him over, she stepped aside wordlessly, allowing him to enter. "Package for you," Jack said, holding out the clipboard. She barely looked at it before silently waving him inside. He followed her into the trailer, his boots making faint taps on the old, creaky wooden floor. Inside, the air was thick, heavy with the stench of something rotten. The house felt stagnant, like it hadn't seen fresh air in years. The shadows cast by the dim light of a single lamp stretched across the room, creating dark corners in every direction. "Just put it in the back," the woman instructed, her voice soft but unsettlingly firm. Jack nodded and followed her down the narrow hallway. He could feel his unease building as they passed rooms filled with things he couldn't quite make out in the darkness. As they reached the back room, Jack saw something out of the corner of his eye. A shape, a figure standing eerily still in the corner of the room. He froze, his breath catching in his throat. Jack's heart skipped a beat as he stared at the figure standing in the corner of the room. At first, it looked like a shadow, but as his eyes adjusted to the dim lighting, he realized it was a person, standing completely still. Too still. He could just make out the outline of a figure tall, hunched slightly, and strangely motionless. His body went rigid, but he told himself it was nothing. Nothing. Just his imagination, running wild after a long day of driving. But something about the way the figure stood unnaturally still, eyes unmoving, made a cold sweat break out across his back. His gut twisted in warning. "Put the package in the back room," the woman repeated, her voice unnervingly calm, as if everything was normal. Jack swallowed hard, trying to push the growing sense of dread away. He nodded slowly, carefully walking towards the back room she had pointed to, his footsteps making an exaggerated creaking sound on the floorboards. Every inch of the house seemed to echo, amplifying the growing tension inside him. As they walked down the narrow hall, Jack felt the oppressive weight of the house pressing down on him. The walls were covered in dark, faded wallpaper, and the faint smell of something sour clung to the air. He glanced into one of the rooms as they passed, catching a glimpse of something odd: a chair overturned, an old blanket tossed across the floor, as if someone had been in a rush to leave. "Just in here," the woman said, opening the door to a small dark room. Jack could barely make out the outline of a closet on the far side, the only other thing in the room besides a low, creaky bed. His pulse quickened, but he forced himself to step inside. As he set the package down, his eyes involuntarily flicked back to the closet. There was a faint movement, like a silhouette shifting just behind the cracked door. Someone was hiding there. Jack's breath caught in his throat. He didn't look around to find out who or what it was. Jack's heart hammered in his chest as he stood frozen in the middle of the dim room. The figure in the closet wasn't moving anymore, but the air felt thick, alive with something he couldn't explain. He swallowed, trying to shake the feeling of being watched, but the heavy presence in the room wouldn't let go. He took a cautious step toward the door, his eyes never leaving the closet. His mind raced. Was it just his imagination? Maybe he'd mistaken the shadows. But deep down, he knew. He could feel it, something was there. Uh, I'll just leave the package here, Jack muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. He turned quickly, desperate to get out of the house. His hand was already on the door frame when the woman's voice stopped him. Come back. Her voice was cold, almost hollow. You need to help me with the box. Jack's skin prickled at the tone. It wasn't a request, it was a demand. He glanced back over his shoulder, but the woman was still standing in the doorway, her face now obscured by the dim light. Her eyes were too wide, too empty, as if she had been waiting for him to notice something. I really can't, Jack stammered, trying to keep his voice steady, but his feet were already moving toward the door. No, she said again, stepping into the room. You need to help. They won't leave until you help. Jack felt the blood drain from his face as she moved closer, her words seeping into his mind like a cold, persistent fog. Who was she talking about? He could feel the weight of her gaze as she followed him toward the door, but he didn't dare look back. His hand gripped the door handle. The need to leave had never been stronger, but before he could escape, there was a loud bang. The closet door slammed open, the figure inside now fully exposed. Jack's breath caught in his throat. The figure in the closet wasn't human. Jack froze in place as the closet door flew open with a deafening bang. His eyes locked onto the figure that stepped into view. It was a man, but not in any way Jack had ever seen before. His body was twisted unnaturally, his limbs too long, stretching and bending in ways that were impossible. His clothes were tattered, hanging off his frame as if they had been torn away. But what struck Jack the most was the face here, rather, the lack of one. It was smooth, featureless, like a blank canvas, but with a deep black void where eyes should have been. The man stood there, unmoving, except for his slow, deliberate breathing. The air in the room felt suffocating as the thing slowly stepped forward, one creaking footstep at a time. Jack's mind screamed at him to run, but his body refused to cooperate. His legs felt like lead, his feet glued to the floor. The only thing he could hear was the slow, rhythmic sound of his own breathing, growing faster and louder as the figure took another step toward him. What are you?" Jack croaked, his voice barely above a whisper, shaking with fear. The figure didn't answer, didn't speak. It just kept coming. Panic surged through Jack's chest, and he suddenly found the strength to move. He spun around, throwing himself toward the door, his hand slamming against the handle. But as he twisted it, he found it locked. The cold metal resisted him, and his pulse raced faster than ever before. He hammered on the door with both hands, his heart pounding in his ears. Behind him, the figure continued its slow, methodical advance. Its heavy breathing grew louder, filling the room with a suffocating presence. Jack turned back toward the closet, his hands trembling. The man was closer now, his head tilted to the side, his mouth opening in a wide, unnatural green grin that stretched impossibly wide. And then, the air was filled with a low, guttural whisper. "You shouldn't have come here." Jack's heart thundered in his chest, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he continued to pound on the door. The figure's whisper echoed in his ears, a low, bone-chilling sound that made his skin crawl. He turned, his mind racing, desperately searching for an escape. But the room was closing in on him. There was nowhere to go, no way out. The figure moved closer, its head tilted at an unnatural angle, and Jack could feel the weight of its gaze, though it had no eyes. He could feel it watching, studying him. The grin on its featureless face spread wider, stretching beyond what should have been possible. Its mouth stretched to an impossible length, its teeth sharp and jagged, like something from a nightmare. "Why are you doing this?" Jack choked out, his voice barely audible, his mind barely holding on to reason. The figure didn't answer, its grin only growing, pulling at its face like it was being stretched by invisible strings. The air around Jack grew thick, oppressive. It was hard to breathe. The walls of the trailer seemed to close in on him, as if the house itself was alive, suffocating him with its presence. Jack's legs felt weak, his body trembling as he finally managed to yank open the door. The light from the hallway flooded into the room, but the figure didn't move. It didn't need to move. Its presence, its horrifying grin, was enough to freeze him in place. "You shouldn't have come here," the voice whispered again, this time louder, clearer. It felt like the words were coming from inside his head, like the figure was in his mind, twisting his thoughts. Jack stumbled backward, his eyes never leaving the grinning creature. He turned and ran, bolting down the hallway, through the dark house. His heart pounded, his mind screaming at him to escape. But every step felt like it was pulling him deeper into the nightmare. The house was alive, and it was hunting him. Thanks for watching, everyone. So, what do you think? Have you ever had an encounter like this? Or maybe something even creepier? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have a story of your own that you want me to share? Drop it down there, and maybe it'll be featured in an upcoming video. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more, and turn on the notifications so you don't miss out on our next terrifying tale. Until next time, stay safe, and remember, the dark is full of secrets.